Testy test. We have to make more progress in progress and poverty. I'm going to make that joke when I start the recording. Okay. All right. Henry George Daily Devotional number 20. We continue with chapter 4, the maintenance of laborers not drawn from capital. What is true in these cases is true in all cases. Right, what cases were we talking about? Well, if it's true in all cases, I guess it doesn't matter what case we were talking about. I don't know. It is not necessary to the production of things that cannot be used as subsistence or cannot be immediately used that there should have been a previous production of the wealth required for the maintenance of the laborers while the production is going on. It is only necessary that there should be somewhere within the circle of exchange a contemporaneous production of sufficient subsistence for the laborers, and a willingness to exchange this subsistence for the thing on which the labor is being bestowed. Yeah, as long as somebody's doing the cooking, you can go do whatever else you want to do. And as a matter of fact, it is not true in any normal condition of things. Is it not true in any normal condition of things that consumption is supported by contemporaneous production? Here is a luxurious idler, who does no productive work either with head or hand, but lives, we say, upon wealth which his father left him securely invested in government bonds. Does his subsistence, as a matter of fact, come from wealth accumulated in the past, or from the productive labor that is going on around him? On his table are new laid eggs, butter churned but a few days before, milk which the cow gave this morning, fish which 24 hours ago were swimming in the sea, meat which the butcher boy has just brought in time to be cooked, vegetables fresh from the garden, and fruit from the orchard. In short, hardly anything that has not recently left the hand of the productive laborer, for in this category must be included transporters and distributors, as well as those who are engaged in the first stages of production. So as a side note, we could imagine in a world with freezing and refrigerating technology that it still counts as coming from a laborer the moment that you take it from the grocery store. But maybe not if you leave it in your own freezer. I don't know. And nothing that has been produced for any considerable length of time, unless it may be some bottles of old wine. Yeah, I think George is really underestimating the power of the TV dinner here. What this man inherited from his father and on which we say he lives is not actually wealth at all, but only the power of commanding wealth as others produce it. and it is from this contemporaneous production that his subsistence is drawn. The 50 square miles of London undoubtedly contain more wealth than within the same space anywhere else exists. Yet were productive labor in London absolutely to cease, within a few hours people would begin to die like rotten sheep, and within a few weeks, or at most a few months, hardly one would be left alive. For an entire suspension of productive labor would be a disaster more dreadful than ever yet befell a beleaguered city. It would not be a mere external wall of circumvallation, such as Titus drew around Jerusalem, which would prevent the constant incoming of the supplies on which a great city lives, but it would be the drawing of a similar wall around each household. Imagine such a suspension of labor in any community, and you will see how true it is that mankind really lives from hand to mouth, and that it is also the daily labor of the community that supplies the community with its daily bread. Yeah, I'd say we see this in instances of natural disaster where, the actual physical disturbance passes, and yet in the ensuing weeks, if no one is able to bring from that community, from outside of it, is able to bring them wealth, they immediately are imperiled. Just as the subsistence of the laborers who built the pyramids was drawn not from a previously boarded stock, but from the constantly recurring crops of the Nile Valley. Just as a modern government, when it undertakes a great work of years, does not appropriate to it wealth already produced, but wealth yet to be produced, which is taken from producers in taxes as the work progresses. So it is that the subsistence of the laborers engaged in production, which does not directly yield subsistence, comes from the production of subsistence in which others are simultaneously engaged. If we trace the circle of exchange by which work done in the production of a great steam engine secures to the worker bread, meat, clothes, and shelter, we shall find that though between the laborer on the engine and the producers of the bread, meat, etc., there may be 1,000 intermediate exchanges, the transaction, when reduced to its lowest terms, really amounts to an exchange of labor between him and them. Now the cause which induces the expenditure of the labor on the engine is evidently that someone who has power to give what is desired by the laborer on the engine wants in exchange an engine. Okay, let me try that again. Now the cause which induces the expenditure of the labor on the engine is evidently that someone who has power to give what is desired by the laborer on the engine wants in exchange an engine. That is to say, there exists a demand for an engine on the part of those producing bread, meat, etc., or on the part of those who are producing what the producers of the bread, meat, etc. desire. It is this demand which directs the labor of the machinist to the production of the engine, and hence, reversely, the demand of the machinist for bread, meat, etc., really directs an equivalent amount of labor to the production of these things, and thus his labor, actually exerted in the production of the engine, virtually produces the things in which he expends his wages. Alright? Or, to formalize this principle, and this bit is all in italics here, the demand for consumption determines the direction in which labor will be expended in production. End italics. This principle is so simple and obvious that it needs no further illustration, yet in its light all the complexities of our subject disappear, and we thus reach the same view of the real objects and rewards of labor in the intricacies of modern production that we gained by observing in the first beginnings of society the simpler forms of production and exchange. We see that now, as then, each laborer is endeavoring to obtain by his exertions the satisfaction of his own desires. We see that although the minute division of labor assigns to each producer the production of but a small part, or perhaps nothing at all, of the particular things he labors to get, yet, in aiding in the production of what other producers want, he is directing other labor to the production of the things he wants. In effect, producing them himself. And thus, if he make jackknives and eat wheat, the wheat is really as much the produce of his labor as if he had grown it for himself and left wheat growers to make their own jackknives. Yes, this harkens back to George's original example of the hunting or the fishing group, and then one person decides to become the canoe maker, so they don't directly catch the fish, but they are enabling the fish catchers, the fishermen, to go fishing, and so we would say they all jointly catch the fish. The simple matches the complex. We continue. We thus see how thoroughly and completely true it is that in whatever is taken or consumed by laborers, in return for labor rendered, there is no advance of capital to the laborers. If I have made jackknives and with the wages received have bought wheat, I have simply exchanged jackknives for wheat, added jackknives to the existing stock of wealth, and taken wheat from it. And as the demand for consumption determines the direction in which labor will be expended in production, it cannot even be said, so long as the limit of wheat production has not been reached, that I have lessened the stock of wheat. For by placing jackknives in the exchangeable stock of wealth and taking wheat out, I have determined labor at the other end of a series of exchanges to the production of wheat. Just as the wheat grower, by putting in wheat and demanding jackknives, determined labor to the production of jackknives, as the easiest way by which wheat could be obtained. And so the man who is following the plow, though the crop for which he is opening the ground is not yet sown, and after being sown will take months to arrive at maturity, he is yet by the exertion of his labor in plowing virtually producing the food he eats and the wages he receives. For though plowing is but a part of the operation of producing a crop, it is a part, and as necessary a part as harvesting. The doing of it is a step toward procuring a crop, which, by the assurance which it gives of the future crop, sets free from the stock constantly held the subsistence and wages of the plowman. This is not merely theoretically true, but it is practically and literally true. At the proper time for plowing, let plowing cease. Would not the symptoms of scarcity at once manifest themselves without waiting for the time of the harvest? Let plowing cease, and would not the effect at once be felt in counting room and machine shop and factory? Would not loom and spindle soon stand as idle as the plow? That this would be so, we see in the effect which immediately follows a bad season. And if this would be so, is not the man who plows really producing his subsistence and wages as much as though during the day or week his labor actually resulted in the things for which his labor is exchanged? And will do it for our reading today. I liked that Henry George used the term virtual up in there, virtually producing the food he eats. There is part of me that wants him to be more consistent with using that term of like virtual. Because like there's this like pedantic side of me that when he's saying we're literally making our wages when we're doing a 5-year project, it. I just see how people could get stuck on that kind of terminology, and I don't know. I value this in terms of just like seeing how clearly wealth is produced by labor, how you don't necessarily need to have stored up anything beforehand as long as you're able to devote some of your time in laboring towards getting what you need to survive. Then you can still labor to create capital. Yeah. It's just a little annoying when he says you're literally making, like he said in here, where's this literal? This is not merely theoretically true, it is practically and literally true. I mean, I agree, it is literally true that your wages come from your wages come from labor. Because I always get annoyed when people say it works in theory but not in practice. If it works in theory but not in practice, then your theory is flawed in some way you haven't yet figured out theoretically. Um, or your practice doesn't somehow match your theory. I don't know. Anyway, not the clearest of explaining our commentary do I offer. See ya. George keeps talking about how via exchange everyone is contributing to via exchange the whatever the desires of a laborer are determine what kinds of wealth others produce. Hmm. What did I just do? MP4, convert save. And then it's Henry George. There's the MP4. Oh, I don't remember this altered content. Hmm. Deep fakes. Spotify. What happened? Why does this sign look different? I don't want to add a new podcast. Why is this looking different than user? Is this just not loading, like the sidebar and stuff? What's happening? Yeah, the website's just like not even loading right. What does this mean, ranking 13? This episode is ranked 13th out of the... What is going on? This whole sidebar is not even loading. I mean, the page is like half loading. Hello? I don't get it. Am I not signed in as this anymore? On web, click new episode. I don't. I'm going crazy. You know what we could do is watch. See if this spelled the. Yeah, there's no new episode button up here. Podcasters.spotify.com/pod. Yeah, there's no bar appearing. No, I don't want to do. Is there no way to just like toggle this off? I don't. Yeah, I don't know. This bar is not loading. This is from 2 years ago tomorrow. I don't know.